The evening was quiet, the kind where the city hums softly but doesn't roar. The billionaire CEO, a man known for his sharp mind and relentless ambition, decided to step away from his usual high-profile dinners. Tonight, he wanted no meetings, no negotiations, just a simple meal alone. His driver dropped him near a small, modest restaurant he had passed by many times but never entered. As he walked toward the entrance, something caught his eye. A frail old man sat on the sidewalk, his clothes worn but clean, his hands trembling as he held a half-eaten piece of bread. Beside him, a little boy, no older than 6, was carefully wrapping a thin scarf around the old man's neck, whispering, "Grandpa, you'll catch a cold." The CEO froze. There was no pity in the boy's eyes, only love. The old man smiled weakly, patting the boy's head before breaking the bread in two, giving the larger piece to the child. Something tightened in the CEO's chest. He had seen poverty before, had even donated millions to charities, but this was different. This wasn't a statistic or a report. This was a grandfather choosing hunger so his grandson could eat. Without thinking, he approached them. The old man looked up, wary but polite. The boy clutched his grandfather's sleeve, curious but unafraid. "Would you like to join me for dinner?" the CEO asked, his voice softer than he had ever heard it. The old man hesitated, then shook his head gently. "Thank you, sir, but we're all right." The CEO knelt down, eye level with the boy. "What's your favorite food?" The boy's eyes lit up. "Chicken soup. Grandpa makes the best, but..." He trailed off, glancing at his grandfather. The CEO stood, his decision made. "Then let's have some together." "My treat." For the first time in years, the billionaire CEO didn't think about business, deals, or profits. He thought about warmth, about shared meals, about the way the boy's laughter sounded when he sipped the hot soup carefully placed before him. And as he sat there, listening to the old man's quiet stories of a life filled with struggles but also small joys, something inside him shifted. He had come to dine alone. But now, he realized how much he had been missing. The small restaurant was warm, the smell of spices and simmering broth filling the air. The billionaire CEO sat across from the old man and the boy, watching as the child eagerly spooned soup into his mouth, his cheeks flushed with happiness. The old man ate slowly, savoring each bite as if it were a rare gift. The CEO hesitated before speaking. "How long have you two been?" He trailed off, not wanting to say the wrong thing. "On the streets," the old man finished for him, his voice calm. "About 8 months." He wiped the boy's chin with a napkin. "Before that, we had a small room. But the rent became too much." The boy looked up. "Grandpa used to fix watches. He had a tiny shop with a big clock on the wall." His eyes sparkled with pride. The CEO frowned. "What happened?" The old man sighed. "Age, mostly. My hands shake now. Can't do the delicate work anymore. And when the landlord raised the rent, I couldn't keep up." He glanced at his grandson. "His parents, well, they're gone. So it's just us." The boy, sensing the shift in mood, reached over and squeezed his grandfather's hand. "But we're okay. Grandpa tells the best stories, and sometimes people give us fruit." The CEO felt a lump in his throat. He had faced boardroom battles, billion-dollar deals, and ruthless competitors, but this quiet strength humbled him. "You know," the old man said softly, "I don't want pity. Just a chance to work again. Even if it's sweeping floors or carrying boxes." The CEO leaned forward. "What if I could help you get back on your feet? A job, a place to stay." The old man shook his head. "No handouts, sir. I've lived my whole life on my own 2 feet. I won't stop now." The boy piped up. "Grandpa says pride is the only thing nobody can take from you." The CEO sat back, stunned. Here was a man who had lost nearly everything, yet he held on to his dignity like a shield. Outside, the city buzzed, cars honking, people rushing past. But inside that little restaurant, time seemed to slow. The CEO pulled out his phone, not to check emails or stocks, but to jot down a note. Find a way to help, without stripping his pride. As they stepped out into the cool night air, the boy suddenly hugged the CEO's leg. "Thank you for the soup, mister." The CEO ruffled the boy's hair, his voice thick. "Anytime, kid." He watched them walk away, the old man's arm around the boy's shoulders. For the first time in years, the billionaire felt something unfamiliar, a hunger no expensive meal could satisfy. He didn't just want to help them. He needed to. The billionaire CEO couldn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the old man's trembling hands and the boy's hopeful smile. He had spent years building an empire, but none of his wealth could fix what he had just witnessed. The next morning, he cancelled his meetings and told his driver to take him back to the same neighborhood. He didn't know what he was looking for, maybe just a sign of where they had gone. As he walked past the small shops and food stalls, he noticed a crowd gathered near a street corner. Curiosity pulled him closer. There, sitting on an upturned crate, was the old man, bent over a broken watch laid out on a cloth. A young woman stood nearby, watching anxiously as his shaky fingers adjusted tiny gears inside. The CEO stood silently at the back of the crowd, observing. The old man's hands still trembled, but his focus was absolute. After a few tense minutes, he snapped the watch casing shut and handed it back to the woman. "It should keep time now," he said quietly. The woman pressed a few bills into his hand. "Thank you. No one else would even look at this old thing." The old man tried to refuse the money, but she insisted. As the crowd dispersed, the CEO approached. The boy spotted him first and tugged his grandfather's sleeve excitedly. "You came back," the boy said. The old man looked up, surprised. "Sir, you shouldn't trouble yourself." "I wasn't troubled," the CEO interrupted. "I was impressed." He nodded at the watch. "You still have the skill. Why not work in a proper shop again?" The old man sighed. "No shop will hire these hands. And even if they did, who would rent to a man with no fixed address and a child to care for?" The boy, sensing the tension, reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, handmade toy, a little dog crafted from folded paper. He held it out to the CEO. "I made this for you. Grandpa taught me." The CEO took the fragile paper animal carefully, as if it were made of glass. In that moment, an idea struck him, one that wouldn't feel like charity. "What if," he said slowly, "I could introduce you to someone who needs a watchmaker? Not for delicate repairs, but to train others. Your knowledge is valuable." The old man frowned. "Train who? Most young people don't want to learn this craft anymore." "Some do," the CEO countered. "I know a few." He didn't mention they were horology students at a university he'd once donated to. The boy tugged at his grandfather's sleeve. "Can we try, Grandpa? Please?" The old man looked at his grandson, then at his own weathered hands. For the first time, a flicker of hope crossed his face. Meanwhile, the CEO studied the paper dog in his palm. It struck him how much care had gone into making it, far more care than he'd put into anything in years. He realized then that he wasn't just offering help. He was asking for it. The university's clock tower loomed overhead as the CEO's car pulled up to the curb. Inside, the old man sat stiffly in his freshly cleaned clothes, his grandson bouncing excitedly beside him. The boy had never seen such a big building before. "Remember," the CEO said as they walked toward the entrance, "just be yourself. Tell them what you know." The old man nodded, but his hands wouldn't stop shaking. Not from age this time, from fear. The meeting started well enough. The horology professor, a middle-aged woman with sharp glasses, listened politely as the old man explained how he'd learned watchmaking from his father before the war. But when she asked him to demonstrate repairing a modern movement, his fingers betrayed him. A tiny spring went flying across the room. I'm sorry," the old man whispered, face burning with shame. The professor gave him a pitying smile. "Perhaps we could arrange something less hands-on." Outside the office, the boy suddenly doubled over coughing. His small frame shook violently before he collapsed against his grandfather. Hey! Hey now! The CEO caught them both as the old man struggled to hold the limp child. The boy's forehead burned with fever. Everything happened in a blur after that. The CEO's driver sped them to the nearest hospital. Nurses whisked the boy away while the old man stood frozen in the hallway, his worn shoes squeaking on the polished floor. "He's been tired these past weeks," the old man murmured, more to himself than anyone. "I thought it was just the cold nights." The CEO sat beside him, remembering the way the boy had given him the paper dog just yesterday. So full of life then. Now the doctors were using words like pneumonia and malnutrition. A young resident approached cautiously. "Sir, we need to discuss payment options for treatment." The CEO stood immediately. "Send all bills to me." But the old man grabbed his arm with surprising strength. "No. No charity hospitals. We'll manage." "This isn't charity," the CEO snapped, louder than he meant to. This is. His voice broke. The truth tumbled out before he could stop it. "My son died because I waited too long to take him to the hospital. I was in a meeting when my wife called. By the time I got there..." The hallway fell silent except for the distant beep of machines. The old man studied the CEO's face, really studied it, for the first time. He saw the grief hiding behind expensive suits and power. Slowly, he released his grip. "Then you understand," he said simply. The CEO sank back into his chair. For years he'd buried himself in work to escape that memory. Now here it was, raw as the day it happened, brought back by a sick child he'd known for barely a week. When the doctor finally emerged to say the boy would recover, both men wept, one silently, one with great heaving sobs that echoed through the sterile halls. That night, as the old man kept vigil by his grandson's bedside, the CEO made 2 phone calls. One to his assistant to clear his schedule indefinitely. The other to a real estate agent about leasing a small ground-floor shop with an apartment above it. Not out of pity. Out of remembrance. The CEO's phone had been buzzing non-stop for 3 days. Board members. Investors. His panicked COO. Everyone demanded to know why he disappeared during the most critical quarter of the year. He silenced the device again as he walked into the hospital cafeteria, balancing 2 steaming cups of tea. The old man sat where he'd left him, in the chair by his grandson's bedside, his back bent like a question mark over the sleeping child. "You need to rest too," the CEO said, offering 1 cup. The old man accepted it with a tired nod. "Can't. What if he wakes up scared?" The CEO understood that fear better than he wanted to admit. He pulled up another chair. Outside the window, the first light of dawn painted the sky in pale yellows. "You should go back to your life," the old man said suddenly. "We've taken enough of your time." Before the CEO could respond, his phone buzzed again, this time with a news alert. A business headline flashed across the screen: "Billionaire CEO abandons company, stock prices plummet." The old man's eyes flicked to the screen. For the first time, real anger tightened his features. "All this time, you're one of them?" "One of who?" "People who think money fixes everything." The old man gestured at the hospital room. "You think paying these bills makes up for whatever guilt you're carrying?" The CEO's grip tightened on his cup. Hot liquid sloshed over his fingers, but he didn't flinch. "That's not why I'm here." "Then why?" The truth sat heavy in his throat. "Because your grandson reminds me." His voice cracked. "He laughs like my son did." A nurse entered before more could be said, checking the boy's vitals with practiced efficiency. "He's improving," she announced. "Another day or two of observation, then he can go home." "Home," the old man repeated bitterly. That afternoon, while the boy slept peacefully, the CEO took the old man to see the small shop space he'd leased. Sunlight streamed through the front windows, illuminating dust motes in the air. The apartment upstairs had 2 bedrooms and a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in. The old man walked through the empty rooms like a ghost, his fingers trailing along the walls. When he reached the workbench the CEO had installed, sturdy oak with a built-in magnifying lamp, his shoulders began to shake. "I can't accept this." "It's not a gift," the CEO said quickly. "It's a business proposal. You train 2 apprentices from the university. They handle the delicate work. You oversee quality control. The shop takes a percentage." The old man turned, tears cutting clean lines through days of exhaustion. "Why are you really doing this?" The CEO looked at the empty space where a store sign would hang. "Because when my son died, I buried myself in work. Now I'm drowning in it." He met the old man's gaze. "Your grandson, he made me remember how to breathe." A sudden commotion at the door interrupted them. The CEO's assistant stood there, tie askew, holding a stack of urgent contracts. "Sir, you have to come back. The board is threatening. Tell them I quit." The assistant paled. "You can't be serious." The CEO took the contracts and placed them on the workbench. "I'll sign whatever they need to transition power. But I'm done." As his stunned assistant left, the old man studied him with new understanding. "You're giving up everything." "No." The CEO looked around the small shop, imagining the boys' laughter filling the upstairs rooms. "I think I'm finally choosing something." Back at the hospital, the boy was awake and asking for his grandfather. When they entered his room, his fever-bright eyes immediately noticed the change between the 2 men. "You're not mad anymore," he observed sleepily. The old man smoothed the boy's hair. "No, little one. We're not mad." The CEO reached into his pocket and pulled out the crumpled paper dog, now carefully flattened and preserved in a clear sleeve. He placed it on the bedside table where the boy could see it. "Tell me," he said, sitting on the edge of the hospital bed. "How would you like to learn how to fix watches?" The bell above the shop door jingled for the first time in 20 years. The old man stood frozen behind the counter as the first customer, a woman with an antique pocket watch, stepped inside. His hands trembled worse than usual. He could feel the CEO, no, he wasn't a CEO anymore, was he, watching from the back room. "Can you fix this?" the woman asked, placing the timepiece gently on the glass counter. "It was my grandfather's." The old man's throat tightened. He lifted the watch with practiced care, feeling its weight. 1912 Elgin, he murmured automatically. The chain's original too. As his fingers traced the familiar curves, something remarkable happened. The shaking lessened. Just a little. Upstairs, the boy was supposed to be resting but instead pressed his face against the bedroom window, watching the street below. So many people. And they were coming to their shop. His chest felt funny, not the sick, wheezy feeling from before, but something warm and fizzy. The former CEO, he needed a new title now, observed both of them from the doorway. He'd spent years reading complex financial reports, but these 2 faces were easier to understand than any spreadsheet. Pride. Nerves. Hope. The moment shattered when a flash went off outside. A photographer crouched on the sidewalk, camera aimed straight at the shop window. "Damn," the man muttered, pulling the blinds shut. He recognized the reporter lingering nearby too, the same one who'd been hounding him since his resignation made front-page news. Downstairs, the old man successfully diagnosed the pocket watch's problem, a broken mainspring, and promised repairs within the week. As the customer left, she paused in the doorway. "Aren't you the billionaire who?" "We're watchmakers," the old man interrupted firmly. "That's all." When the door closed, both men exhaled. Then the old man surprised himself by laughing. "Did you see her face? She looked at me like I'd grown a second head." The sound of footsteps pounding down the stairs interrupted them. The boy burst into the shop, eyes wide. "There's a man outside with a big camera. And he's talking to the lady who just left." The former CEO knelt to the boy's level. "Remember how we talked about some people being too curious?" The boy nodded solemnly. "Like Mrs. Chen's tabby cat that always gets stuck in our old alley." "Exactly. Well, these people are like that cat. They'll lose interest if we don't give them anything interesting to watch." The plan worked for exactly 3 hours. By afternoon, a crowd had gathered outside. Not customers, reporters and gawkers drawn by the sensational story. Disgraced billionaire opened shop with homeless man cameras flashed through the windows. Someone had even flown a drone near the upstairs apartment. The boy started crying when a loud bang against the door startled him. The old man's hands shook violently as he tried to comfort him. The former CEO felt something hot and unfamiliar rise in his chest. He'd faced hostile takeovers, shareholder revolts, even death threats during his career. But this was different. They'd crossed a line. He yanked open the door just as another reporter raised his fist to knock. The sudden movement sent the crowd surging forward. "Enough." His voice cut through the noise like a blade. "There's a sick child in here. You want a story? Here it is." He pointed to the old man gently rocking the frightened boy. "This is Master Watchmaker Wu and his grandson. I'm just the apprentice." The bold-faced lie stunned the crowd into silence. Even the old man's eyebrows shot up. "A apprentice?" a reporter stammered. The former CEO crossed his arms. "You heard me. Now unless you have a broken watch that needs fixing, get off our doorstep." He slammed the door, heart pounding. Behind him, the boy's sniffles had turned to giggles. "You're a terrible liar," the old man observed. But he was smiling. The former CEO shrugged. "I'll have to practice." That night, after they'd drawn all the blinds and the boy finally slept, the two men sat at the kitchen table with tea. The old man studied the younger man's face. "You could have gone back to your old life today. Used your power to make them leave." The former CEO rotated his cup slowly. That life was empty. Like one of those luxury watches that look impressive but have cheap mechanisms inside. The old man snorted. "That's the worst watch metaphor I've ever heard." They laughed quietly, careful not to wake the boy. Outside, the occasional camera flash still lit up the edges of the blinds like distant lightning. But inside, for the first time in all their lives, all three of them felt safe. The next morning, they opened the shop to find a line of actual customers waiting, many holding antique timepieces, a few just curious locals. At the very back of the crowd stood the university horology professor, holding a carefully wrapped package. "I believe," she said when her turn came, "we got off on the wrong foot." She placed the package on the counter. Inside was a pristine 1920s Rolex needing restoration. "Our department would be honored if Master Wu would consider consulting on special projects." The old man's hands didn't shake at all as he examined the watch. "We'll need to discuss terms," he said, with all the dignity of a man who'd just reclaimed his place in the world. Behind him, the former CEO, no, the apprentice, smiled and reached for the appointment book. The shop had become something of a local legend. People came not just for the exquisite watch repairs, but for the unlikely trio behind the counter, the aging master watchmaker with steady hands, his bright-eyed grandson, and the former billionaire who now cheerfully handled customer service. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, while the boy was at school and the old man, Master Wu, as everyone now called him, was painstakingly restoring a 19th-century French carriage clock, the bell above the door chimed. The ex-CEO looked up from the appointment book, then froze. Standing in the doorway, shaking water off an expensive umbrella, was the last person he expected to see, his former business rival, a sharp-faced man who had tried to sabotage his company multiple times over the years. "Daniel," the man said smoothly, glancing around the shop with barely concealed amusement. "Or should I call you apprentice now?" The ex-CEO set down his pen. "What do you want, Richard?" Richard stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I came to offer you a way out. A chance to come back to the real world." He slid a business card across the counter. "My board would welcome someone with your experience." Master Wu didn't look up from his work, but his shoulders tensed. The ex-CEO pushed the card back. "I'm exactly where I need to be." Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Really? Playing shopkeeper to some homeless?" The ex-CEO moved so fast he startled himself, grabbing Richard by the lapels and shoving him toward the door. "Get out." Richard straightened his jacket, still smiling. "Think it over. The offer stands until Friday." When the door closed, Master Wu finally spoke. "He'll be back." "I know." They worked in silence until the school bell rang, signaling the boy's return. But when the shop door opened, it wasn't the cheerful greeting they'd grown accustomed to. The boy shuffled in, his uniform dirty, his eyes red-rimmed. "What happened?" Master Wu asked immediately. The boy bit his lip. "Some kid said, they said Grandpa's shop is just pretend. That we're only famous because of him." He glanced at the ex-CEO, then quickly looked away. The air left the room. The ex-CEO knelt down. "Look at me." When the boy finally met his eyes, he continued, "Your grandfather is the most talented watchmaker I've ever met. That's the truth. But no buts. Tomorrow, you'll show those kids this." He went to the back room and returned with a small velvet box. Inside was an exquisite miniature clock no larger than a coin, a masterpiece of precision engineering. "Your grandfather made this when he was younger than you are now." The boy's eyes widened as he took the box with reverent hands. Master Wu looked stunned. "How did you?" "I found the designs in your old notebook. Had a friend at a Swiss workshop make it." The ex-CEO smiled. "Consider it an early birthday present." The boy threw his arms around the man's neck, clinging tightly. Over his shoulder, the ex-CEO met Master Wu's gaze, and saw something there he'd never expected. Acceptance. That night, as the boy practiced his reading aloud, a book about famous inventors, the ex-CEO noticed Master Wu digging through an old suitcase. He pulled out a yellowed envelope and stared at it for a long moment before speaking. "There's something you should know," the old man said quietly. "About the boy's parents." The ex-CEO tensed. "You don't have to." "I do." Master Wu opened the envelope, revealing a faded photograph of a young couple standing proudly in front of a small watch shop. "His father, my son, was a brilliant engineer. His mother was a doctor. They died in a flu outbreak 5 years ago, volunteering at an overcrowded clinic." He swallowed hard. The boy doesn't remember them. I've never known how to tell him. The ex-CEO studied the photo, then the old man's grief-etched face. "You've kept their memory alive every day by raising him with such love." Master Wu wiped his eyes roughly. "You're getting better at this emotions thing. Had a good teacher." They sat in comfortable silence as the boy's voice filled the room, stumbling over the bigger words but determined to finish his chapter. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but inside, something fragile had been mended, stronger than before. The next morning, Richard returned as predicted. But this time, the ex-CEO was ready. "I have a counteroffer," he said, sliding a folded paper across the counter. Richard opened it, then laughed incredulously. "You want me to invest in this little shop?" "No. I want you to invest in them." The ex-CEO nodded toward the back room, where Master Wu was teaching the boy how to clean a watch mechanism. "We're starting a foundation to train underprivileged youth in watchmaking and microengineering. Your company gets the tax write-off and good PR." Richard stared at him. "You're serious?" "Deadly." The ex-CEO leaned forward. "And if you say no, I'll call every reporter in town about how you tried to bully an old man and a child." Richard's face twisted, then, unexpectedly, he chuckled. "You're different now." He signed the paper with a flourish. "I'll have my lawyers draw up the contracts." When he left, Master Wu emerged from the back, eyebrows raised. "That was impressive." The ex-CEO grinned. "Old habits." The boy tugged on his sleeve. "Does this mean I can have more kids to play with?" "Better," the ex-CEO said, ruffling his hair. "It means you'll have more friends." As the shop filled with the sounds of the boy's excited chatter and Master Wu's quiet laughter, the ex-CEO realized something extraordinary. He was happy. Truly, deeply happy. And that was worth more than all the billions he'd ever made. The morning of the foundation's grand opening dawned bright and clear. The shop, now expanded into the neighboring storefront, buzzed with activity as volunteers arranged displays of delicate watch mechanisms and student projects. The boy, now proudly introducing himself as Junior Watchmaker Wu, darted between tables, adjusting name cards with serious precision. Master Wu stood by the window, examining his reflection in the glass. The crisp new suit hung slightly loose on his frame, but his posture was straighter than it had been in years. Behind him, the ex-CEO, though no one called him that anymore, adjusted his tie in the window's reflection. "Nervous?" the younger man asked. Master Wu smoothed his lapels. "I've repaired watches for emperors and thieves. Why should this be different?" "Because today isn't about timepieces," the man said gently. "It's about legacies." The boy interrupted by tugging them both toward the door. "Come on. The TV people are here." Outside, a small crowd had gathered, reporters, curious neighbors, and a dozen wide-eyed children from the local orphanage who would be the foundation's first students. As Master Wu stepped up to the microphone, the murmuring crowd fell silent. He cleared his throat. "When I was 8 years old," he began, voice stronger than expected, "my father gave me a broken alarm clock and said, 'Fix it.' I didn't know then that he was giving me more than a trade. He was giving me—" He hesitated, searching for the right word. "A future," the ex-CEO supplied quietly. Master Wu nodded. "Exactly. Today, we pass that gift forward." The applause was still building when a disturbance rippled through the crowd. A silver-haired woman pushed her way to the front, her expensive coat starkly out of place among the neighborhood residents. The ex-CEO went rigid, he recognized her immediately. Margaret Van Doren. Chairwoman of his former company's board. She marched straight up to him. "Daniel. We need to talk." Master Wu instinctively moved between her and the boy. Margaret's stern expression softened slightly when she saw the child. "Is this—" She trailed off, then reached into her bag and produced a yellowed newspaper clipping. A 5-year-old article showed the boy's parents receiving a humanitarian award days before their deaths. The boy peered at the photo. That's Mama and Baba?" His small voice cracked. Margaret knelt with surprising grace for a woman her age. "Your mother was my niece," she said gently. "I've been searching for you since the epidemic." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The ex-CEO stared at Margaret, this ruthless businesswoman he'd known for years, and saw tears in her eyes. Master Wu's hands began to shake. All this time, why now? Margaret stood, composing herself. Because Daniel's resignation made headlines. And the description of his homeless watchmaker friend matched the man my niece trusted with her son. She turned to the ex-CEO. You could have come to me any time. I didn't know, he said honestly. The boy looked between the adults, confused. Does this mean I have to leave Grandpa? Margaret surprised them all by laughing. Good heavens, no. But perhaps. She glanced at Master Wu. Perhaps we could discuss shared custody and proper funding for this remarkable foundation? As the two elders began negotiating with the intensity of corporate mergers, the ex-CEO felt a small hand slip into his. The boy looked up at him. Does this make you my uncle now? The question hit him like a physical blow. He crouched down to the child's level. Only if you want it to. The boy considered this gravely, then nodded. Okay. Uncle Danny. The name, so simple, so ordinary, filled him with a joy no business success had ever matched. The celebration continued late into the evening. Margaret proved instrumental in securing major donations, while Master Wu demonstrated watchmaking techniques to fascinated children. Only when the last guest had left did the old man retreat to his workbench, where a special project lay hidden beneath a cloth. He unveiled it with uncharacteristic drama, a magnificent skeleton watch, its inner workings visible through crystal-clear glass. Every gear and spring had been painstakingly handcrafted to form an intricate pattern. Recognize it? Master Wu asked. The ex-CEO, no, Danny now, studied the design. The gears formed a distinct shape, a paper dog. His breath caught. It's for you, Master Wu said gruffly. So you never forget what really keeps time moving forward. Danny turned the watch over. An inscription read, "For the son I gained twice."